General Zinni, you spent more than 3 decades thinking about militaries and civilian governments in the Middle East. You look at Egypt now. How should we see Egypt now?
Well, let me talk from the military perspective, because I think it's very important to understand what the U.S. military, Egyptian military relationship has been. I think everybody here knows that from the 1979 peace agreement, several things happened, the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. One was the demilitarization of the Sinai and the agreement there would be a multinational force. And the United States commits a reinforced battalion to that. It's been there ever since the agreement. At that time, what I think most people don't realize is the Egyptian military made a commitment to move from their Soviet roots, training, equipping, to a U.S. model. That was a big decision because it's a major way of transferring in concepts and doctrine and equipment. And that commitment was very strong, and it was very difficult to implement. In the course of time, of course, with the U.S. assistance, the military has come a long way, has really adjusted to a Western, particularly U.S. Style of operations and equipment. Oftentimes people look, and some of our political leaders, about the support we give and the amount we give and wonder why we give it and think it's still a relic of the agreement between Israel and Egypt. And they don't realize what benefits we get in our relationship with the Egyptian military that are not tied to that. The year after the 1979 agreement, President Carter created the Rapid Deployment Joint Task Force in Tampa, Florida, out of the old Readiness Command. It was to become, 3 years later, the U.S. Central Command, a unified command. President Reagan made it a unified command and upped it. Carter did that because he feared the Soviet influence or even possible Soviet direct invasion into the Gulf region and into the Middle East. And he created and obviously articulated the Carter Doctrine, that we would not accept that and we would be prepared to react in some way. And that RDJTF and CENTCOM was designated to be the insurers that that wouldn't happen. And we had several missions. One was obvious, to ensure the free flow of energy resources from that region, but also to ensure access to the region and freedom of navigation. If anyone looks at the map of the world, you'll see and understands the major trade routes from the Strait of Malacca to the Strait of Hormuz to the Bab el-Mandeb at the base of the Red Sea up through the Suez Canal. That is a critical lifeline for trade, not just energy and oil and natural gas, but obviously a trade route that is critical to the world's economy. And and Carter and the subsequent presidents wanted to protect that. And also the mission of CENTCOM was to help try to ensure stability. Now with that came the relationship military to military and the security assistance programs we ran. It was a major security assistance program we've had with the Egyptian military. What have we gotten from that? The Egyptians sent a division to the first Gulf War to be by our side when Saddam invaded Kuwait. They sent a brigade to be by our side in Somalia. And obviously the interoperability, the training together, based on the same doctrine, that made it much easier to operate with them. And from a CENTCOM or Central Command point of view, that was a major commitment and a major ally to participate in that. With the creation of CENTCOM and the RDJTF, there was an understanding that we could not get access to that region if required with a major military force without Egypt. It was considered, as the term I heard when I arrived at CENTCOM, the keystone. Without the access through the Suez Canal, the overflight rights, basing rights in Cairo West and elsewhere, we could not flow forces to meet an emergency in there or to reinforce our forces. That has always been forthcoming from Egypt. We've always had quick response on the need to get our planes over there to refuel and base in some of the bases, particularly Cairo West, priority in the Suez Canal. In addition to that, like most areas of the world, training space is very difficult to come by. And we ran it in the time when we were concerned about major thrusts into the Middle East or hegemons in the Middle East that might cause problems. We were concerned about a place to train that had the contiguous air, land, and sea space that we can operate at a scale that we needed to practice. The Egyptians provided that, and the largest military exercise in the world, Bright Star, was conducted every other year. And actually, it was to the advantage of our European forces, European Command, because they were able to participate. And of course, they didn't have that kind of maneuver space and that kind of agreement to provide that kind of training environment anywhere in Europe. And I just bring this up because I think that people think that the $1.3 billion is some sort of gift that just arrives. First of all, much of that is done in kind with U.S. equipment, U.S. training, officers and NCOs that come to U.S. schools. I just lectured at Maxwell Air Force Base at our Air Command and Staff College, and we're Egyptian officers in there, as they are in every one of our military schools. And so that involvement, that close cooperation, that close relationship has been critical to us since 1979 in accomplishing our military missions. And the relationship officer to officer has also been very close. I watched as the events took place, obviously in 2011. I watched very carefully on the reaction of the Egyptian military. And of course, I would say compare what happened there to what happened in Libya and what happens now in Syria with their military. I think they remained very restrained. I think they were interested in making sure that everything turned out in a way that was in the best interest of the people and resolved itself in a way, and it's still resolving itself, that makes Egypt come back to be a prosperous country, one with the kind of democracy we would appreciate. And as John said, the military is figuring out its role now. And I would not want to break that tie at this critical moment between the U.S. and the Egyptian military. It's been very strong. We've been on battlefields together. They've given us everything we needed to respond to critical situations and been by our side when that happened. And I think it's important to get through this and work with them to find out what that right level and right place is in this evolving and emerging Egyptian political system and society. Thank you.